Hey, what's up, tribe? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the TFC Audio Project Down Under. This week I chat with Rod Ventura from Movement Theory. Rod is an Adelaide-based physiotherapist who originally connected with us through a shared interest and respect for feet as our foundation for movement, which we discuss throughout the episode, along with the fascinating fascial connections that exist in the body, how they're relevant to pain and injury, and the value of combining manual and movement therapy with an empowering narrative and a holistic approach to health.
This week's episode is brought to you by TFC Courses. Our brand new online workshop 2.0 launched last week, and we are so grateful to everyone who's already signed up. After touring our feet balance and play workshop across Australia over the past 12 months, we wanted to turn it into a digital resource so that anyone who couldn't make it along to our in-person events could learn and play from home. If you've already completed the Foot Collective's Workshop 1.0, there is still plenty of value in our updated version, with more than 3 hours of content covering crucial theory on feet and footwear, balance, play, breath, and ground living, plus simple ways to assess your function and restore your feet and lower bodies from the ground up. This course is designed for people of all ages and movement abilities, and we've even included some bonus training videos where James takes you through some guided routines to work on your feet, ankles, knees, and hips. The course is just $42, and if you use the discount code 10OFF at checkout, you can save 10%. To check it out and use that code, head to the link in our show notes.
All right, Rod, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, mate.
Good to be here, man. It's been a long time coming, but looking forward to sitting down and having a good old yarn.
Yeah, well, we connected through Instagram a while back, probably around the start of 2020 from memory, thanks to your interest in feet and obviously just the holistic approach to the body. So yeah, like you said, it's been a long time coming. We haven't actually had a full in-depth conversation about it all, so I'm excited to dig deeper with you today.
Yeah, man, for sure.
So yeah, usually I just get people to start with telling us a bit about yourself and who you are, what you do, why you do it. We can just roll from there.
Yeah, so obviously my name is Rod Ventura. I'm the owner and operator of Movement Theory here in Glenelg, South Australia. So I was actually born in a little country in Central America called El Salvador. So small country, wildly populated, and mum and dad decided to make the journey over to Australia in 1989. So I was only about 2.5 years old, so only a young fella. Basically to give my brother and I a better shot at life, because it is a bit corrupt over there, and things go on, as you may or may not know. But yeah, obviously the best decision they ever made, and super grateful for having the opportunity to be here in Australia, and obviously judging by the last sort of 18 months, the conditions that we've had here in Australia compared to the rest of the world has been pretty special and lucky, I suppose. So that's kind of where my journey started, moving to Australia. But yeah, growing up, I sort of always played sport, played soccer since I was 5 or 6 years old. It came to probably 12 years old when I had my first sort of major injury, sort of broke my leg at school.
Right,
I was a goalie. I was coming out, slide tackle the kid that was trying to score a goal, and he's kicked my foot, bent my foot forward, and obviously ended up rolling my ankle, I thought, pretty bad, and ended up being a hairline fracture in the fibula.
Well, technical difficulties. We'll just keep rolling, but we got up to hearing about how you broke your leg.
Yeah. I was at school playing soccer on my lunch break, and I was the goalie. I sort of slid out, and the attacker sort of came out and sort of kicked my foot, sort of bent sort of down, sort of plantar flexion sort of thing. And I thought I just rolled my ankle pretty bad, but scans revealed I fractured my fibula. So
Nasty.
I was in a bit of a back slab, I think, from memory. And sort of the earliest memories of physio were going in, getting some ultrasound, getting the healing properties going. I suppose that's what I've been told at the time.
Yeah.
And off I went, and I sort of said to myself, wouldn't mind being a physio one day. This is pretty cool. I'd drive past the physio clinic every day on the way home from school, and I thought, this is what I want to do. I was reasonably switched on at school. Got some reasonable grades. Year 12, obviously the big final year. Probably could have done a bit better to get straight into physio, but the entry score is pretty high here in Adelaide. I'm not sure what it's like in the rest of the country, but
Yeah,
um,
generally.
yeah, ended up going a bit of a backdoor way. Got into exercise science or human movement, and did that and really enjoyed the course. I loved PE at school, so it was basically like an extension of PE
Yeah.
on a much higher level, obviously. So loved all the prac and loved doing sort of applied ex phys and all that sort of stuff. But I still had that goal to do physio. And did everything I could to get into the master's program, which is a great entry program here in Adelaide. And I was lucky enough to get in. I think there was 15 students that made it. So it's
Right.
pretty cutthroat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did all the neuroanatomy, did all the anatomy, and made it through. So that was a 2-year degree at sort of an accelerated rate. So they cover what's in the undergrad degree just over 2 years.
Jeez, that would have been
So
intense.
yeah, no rest for the wicked. I'm very lucky that I was living at home at the time with mum and dad.
Yeah.
They sort of said, don't work, we'll got your back, getting a bit
Oh,
of petrol money for the week and all that sort of stuff was pretty cool.
that's handy. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, it's mum and dad for getting me to where I am today. Look, going through physio, I obviously loved it, but I probably didn't have that passion that I've got right now. That's obviously developed over the years. First job out of uni was working in aged care.
Mm.
Which was cool. I think it was what I needed at the time. Working with the elderly population certainly developed a lot of some of my core skills. Communication. With the elderly is obviously very different to how me and you communicate.
Yeah.
Just getting an appreciation of what some of these people have been through. Even through the war and all that sort of stuff. So you pick up a bit of wisdom, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's
Yeah.
we were saying before, I did a stint in aged care as well, and the connections you make are really fascinating. Often it's the best part of the resident's day when you come along and do your physio stuff with them, and go for a walk and things like that. And just that act of connecting with someone who doesn't get enough connection in their day is really special, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's you've hit the nail on the head there. That's probably the thing I enjoyed most about aged care, and probably the one thing that I probably missed when I sort of transitioned into sort of doing some MSK stuff is those connections that I had with them. But as you know, life goes on, and I'm just grateful that I got the opportunity to do that whilst I could. So
Yeah.
obviously coming from the aged care stuff, I moved into actually a different role. So I was doing some consultancy work with the company I was working for. And they basically went around to aged care facilities and assessed the level of funding they were getting from the government based on the care needs of the client. So, everyone gets a level of funding based on their ADLs, their
Mm.
behaviours, and their complex healthcare needs. So, if you've got little old Mavis who can't really walk around, needs a lot of help with their showering and dressing, they might get a higher level of funding. Or you might have, John who's cruising around, pretty active, might have a little bit of pain. They might get lower level of funding. So we always audit the facility to make sure they get the right level of funding that they need.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but once again, I was falling deeper into the stuff that I never thought I would do. Being a physio, I always thought I'd help people out, return from injury, and I was doing admin, paperwork, managing
Yeah.
staff. So I was like, what's the way out? And I was pretty blessed to be given the opportunity to practice out of a small space. One of my friends from school was part owner of a gym here in Adelaide. That's now actually called Soul 365, so one of the premier CrossFit gyms here. But at the time, they had CrossFit Beach Mode down in Somerton Park, and they said, "Hey Rod, would you love to operate out of there?" And I said, "Yeah, I would actually." It's just that it came at the right time because I was sort of soul searching a bit. I'd started an MBA. I was thinking, is this what I'm going to do? Am I going to be doing admin? Am I going to be managing people?
Mm.
And I said, and I was like, nah, I want to be a physio. Like I want to do what I've wanted to do since I was 12 years old, and away I went. But
And
obviously there came.
how was that transition? Yeah, from aged care and admin to the Musk side of things.
Yeah, look, it was a pretty daunting, I guess, but I kind of just backed myself and thought, I was doing some sports trainer work, which is a level of MSK, but working with high level issues, I needed to upskill myself pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I just jumped on some online stuff. I came across a couple of courses early on. So we are talking before about NKT or neurokinetic therapy. So their approach to the body is more sort of applied kinesiology based. And I thought, yeah, let's give this a go and let's start sort of treating clients this sort of way. And sort of ran with that probably, for a good 6 months. Everyone was coming in, getting assessed, NKT, bang, bang,
NKT.
bang.
Yeah.
That's all I talked about, lived and breathed it. I'm sure I dreamt about it as well. Um, but in the background, I was still pretty engaged in social media. I think social media's played a big part to where I am today.
Mm, mm.
So I follow a lot of influential people, but that obviously push the boundaries with some of the physiotherapy stuff that they're doing. Came across Tom Myers and his anatomy train stuff,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the next sort of step I took. Sort of didn't know much about fascia and the connective tissue, or the web that he sort of calls it, and even just the way that people manipulate this structure, manually. I was intrigued, and I thought, my manual therapy skills were pretty basic. Uni covers, not a whole lot. I reckon we probably did a couple of weeks worth of, effleurage and, soft tissue massage.
Yeah, bit of
Um,
Maitland's and yeah.
yeah, it's basic stuff, and I've done some dry needling as well, so I've added some of that, and so I was an NKT, I was needling, I was doing a little bit of soft tissue work, but I sort of wanted to explore my manual therapy skills a little bit more, because I was finding that clients responded pretty well short term to some soft tissue work, which then allowed them to obviously get back into some movement, or improve their range of motion, or be able to load better in a squat or something like that. So I was sort of starting to find my own feet.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess having my own business, limits you a little bit, because you don't really have a boss saying, Rod, like what you're doing is no good. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I can seek out mentors and go, oh, I like what he does, I like what she does, I like what he does here. So I was kind of forming my own opinion on the physiotherapy industry, and sort of almost trialing it with my clients as well.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
how is it I guess I'm interested in how your journey and approach to movement has developed, and obviously, your business is called Movement Theory, and so how you integrate movement with, like you said, the manual therapy stuff you're doing, and yeah, what your approach is there.
Yeah, so I stumbled across another course, surprise, surprise, ran by Gary Ward. So Gary
Yeah,
Ward runs a course called Anatomy in Motion, which is basically a movement-based approach to looking at the body, and understanding that joints act and then muscles react to that. So a joint moves, but then a muscle follows that movement, and gets loaded in a certain way. So that's his philosophy, and it's the way that he teaches the course. But that all starts from the feet.
yeah,
So 33 bones and 26 joints of the foot, all have a purpose, and they should be moving with every step that we take. And the way that that loads up the rest of the body is the way that I started to view the body as a whole, and not sort of just look at segments of the knee does one thing, the hip does one thing. It's like the whole body does one thing, and that aligned with the anatomy trains fascial
mm,
lines is how I started to sort of bring the two together. So understanding that, we have different lines of movement, the front line, the back line, the spiral line. And then I can actually start to, assess clients' movement in a static sense, So postural adaptations they might come in with, but then also get them to move and see where those restrictions in fascial tissue lie. And then obviously then compound that with the anatomy and motion stuff with the joint, starting at the foot. So that's kind of how I started to integrate movement into my manual therapy as well, because I do fascial release to soften the fascia, and then I do some anatomy and motion, or just some movement along fascial lines to get people to understand where their restrictions are, to be able to load better in whatever activity they wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the people that I chat to, or pretty much, well, everyone I chat to that's sort of in our circle or in our community or resonates with the stuff we do, if they're a therapist, I always notice this trend of like, yes, manual therapy can be really helpful for opening up some range of motion and maybe making the system more receptive, and obviously also just therapist client relationship and so on. There's a lot of things that go into manual therapy that aren't just prodding on something, but the fact that needs to be combined and followed up with movements that are actually relevant to someone's condition or something that they want to be able to functionally achieve, because the manual therapy by itself, like you said, can have short-term results, and they can be amazing results. I've experienced some ridiculous results using manual therapy, but they'll always be short-term unless it's followed up with the right loading and movement and behaviors, I would say.
Exactly right, and then obviously it ties in with the client's goals as well. So being mindful of, hey, do you want to just get back to gardening, or playing with your kids, or is it I want to improve my snatch PR or my clean and jerk PR? So it's understanding what actually do they need to do, and what structures do they need to load as well, and then trying to break it down and not make it too confusing, because I think sometimes I see maybe physiotherapy can be a bit too confusing. The way that I see it is the body is so resilient. Like we are designed to move. So I'm very much against like telling a client don't move. It's maybe move with less load. So if you're having pain doing a front squat at 80 kilos, but you can front squat at 40 kilos and it's not causing any issues, then I'm like, go for that. Obviously, clearing off red flags and stuff like that. But it's all about keeping people moving.
Keep people moving and get them moving in more and different ways, basically. And it is really fascinating, the fascial system. Like, by the sounds of it, you've gone deeper into it than I have. So I'd like to explore it a bit more. But just the general understanding that I think most people have, and even has probably been taught at uni for the most part, is the classic mechanical, muscles move, bones, the muscle contracts and that acts as a lever around the joint and so on. But when you look at the connective tissue of the body, which is the fascia, you can see that a little movement at the foot will be directly influencing something that's happening up in your head, for instance, and there is really no disconnections in the body. So maybe let's explore fascia a little bit more, and what you've learned about it, and I mean, I'm sure you could talk for hours, I imagine, because it's such a deep topic. But what do you reckon? What would be, because I know a lot of people listening might not really be familiar with the concept of fascia and fascial lines and so on. So, is there like a brief summary?
Yeah. Clients ask me this all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, what is this fascia thing? You put out a post about fascia, like it sounds pretty technical, but can you explain it to me in layman's terms? And essentially, it's connective tissue. But basically, if we were to lose our muscles and our skeletal structure, there will be left a fascial structure. So you will have an imprint of a fascial system there as well. So if we don't respect that, then I guess we're missing one of our other systems there. But fascia, basically, the way that I describe it to my clients, can basically restrict or limit movement depending on where you might have limitation in the fascial restriction. So, for example, as you've just said, someone with plantar fasciitis might have some restriction in fascia through their cervical extensors, which is part of their superficial backline. So we might be able to manipulate that tissue, soften that area, and all of a sudden, plantar fasciitis is gone, and vice versa. So it's basically understanding that the fascial lines, and there's obviously a majority of them, got the spiral line, got the lateral line, the functional lines, the deep front line, the superficial back line, the superficial front line. All of these do cross over, but also putting people through different movements that will bias a certain line is also important for us to sort of work out, well, what line are we going to work on, what area of that line are we going to work on, but always working from a outside in look rather than honing in on that area, which I think is really important for everyone to understand, that the fascial system is basically an area that we need to sort of look globally on and not sort of focus on one little area, because you might have restrictions in that right hip that's causing that left shoulder to not have as much flexion. So it's just being sensitive to that.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, because most people intuitively get that, oh yeah, everything in the body is connected, and they're like, if you say that to someone, then it's kind of obvious. It's like, where's the disconnection from your foot and your head? It's like, no, there's always some kind of connection. But actually being able to understand that there is a literal, it's almost like a suit of connective tissue around all our muscles, and within the muscles, and everything that's pulling on, like one muscle contracting will pull on the other side in a different area, and along these lines, like you've been talking about. Especially if you see how those lines connect in diagrams, like in anatomy trains, then it just makes it a lot more visual. It gives you that visual imprint of like, wow, literally my big toe is connected to my neck. And and again, traditionally therapists have focused a lot on, okay, your hip hurts, let's treat that hip, let's get the hip moving well, let's do exercises focused on the hip. And sure, you might need to do that, but you also need to look at how the whole system is moving and integrating. Otherwise you're bound to, you might get some results with just treating that hip, but it's likely to come back, or another issue will pop up somewhere else in the system.
Yeah, and it's that sort of tensegrity. I think that's probably maybe the word you maybe looking for, or might
Yeah.
have heard it in the literature. It's that tensegrity structure where everything is connected to everything. But also, it's like when you do fascia work, and I run these sort of 3 series sessions that I do with some of my clients, and we'll look at sort of balancing the lower part of the body first, then maybe going to the trunk or torso, and then finishing off at the head, neck, and jaw. It's almost like unraveling layers of an onion, because you might actually unravel some restrictions in one area, but then that might actually open up another area that has been maybe not freed up or has been holding on because of the other tissue structure that we've just released. So yeah, it is it's very cool to see, but sometimes clients can get a bit like, oh, like, why is my left shoulder now sore? But you've cleared up my hip. It's like, well, we've just unraveled a structure here
Right.
that's, obviously part of the spiral line, for example. We now need to sort of do a bit more work further up that line to sort of, get some more results, long-term results.
And what do you reckon about, like, when we're talking about releasing fascia, like what are your thoughts on what's actually happening there? Like, say you've noticed there's a restriction in a certain line, and you use your hands to release it. What do you reckon is the go there? Like, what is that actual process?
Yeah, well, look, obviously when you're talking to a client, it's some of the conversations that you're going to have, and some of the language that you use. Some clients will say, "Oh yeah, I've got some good release today," and that's what they'll tell everyone. But
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, and from the literature that I've learned, it's almost like changes to the nervous system. So neuromodulation. That's kind of what I'm sort of looking at from a on a higher level, I suppose.
Yeah.
You're basically creating a nervous system change. It's maybe less protected now, and it can actually freely move. That's kind of my interpretation of what this release technique is. Or when someone
Yeah.
says, "Oh, I've just released your fascial scars or tissue," it's more of a nervous system input, and your sort of changes to the nervous system, rather than I've just literally cut through that thick collagenous fascial layer.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
there's research around the fact that you'd need, I can't remember exactly how much force it is, but just a ridiculous amount of force to actually structurally change the fascia,
Yeah.
and certain things. So yeah, and that's pretty much my understanding of it as well. Is, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that goes into it that we still don't fully understand, but that the majority of the effect that you get, like people maybe people would be even more familiar with, say, like a muscle knot and releasing a muscle knot, and so they have this image of like their muscle is actually knotted up and somehow the pressure has unknotted it. But yeah, it seems to be more about how protective the nervous system feels in a certain range of motion and in a certain movement pattern. And if
Yeah.
you can use your hands, or any tool really, to make, it could be education, it could be, just talking to someone about something, and anything that makes the brain or the nervous system feel more safe in a certain range of motion, um, can be a really good tool to then obviously gradually load into that range of motion so that the person actually owns it.
Yeah, and you've talked about tools, so foam rollers and trigger balls and all that sort of stuff. Or even the old massage guns.
Yeah.
They're all tools that work really well to desensitize the system, and obviously, and some people just want to get out of pain, sometimes it can be a bit frustrating because sometimes that's all they care about. It's like, I just want to be pain free. It's like,
Mm,
well, yeah, we can try and get you there, but you've just spent 45 minutes in the garden on Sunday and you couldn't do that last week. So that's a massive change for me. So
yeah.
sometimes they don't see the greater picture sometimes.
Oh man, that's huge. Yeah, all the physios I've chatted to, it seems to be the biggest struggle, because I think for the longest time the whole profession and the whole healthcare system has been so pain focused and so focused on, we need to get rid of pain, we need to kill pain, pain is the enemy. Whereas, and so people have built up this perception of pain as this bad thing that has to go away, but rather than using it as a teacher and as guidance of what your body is ready for. And yeah, like you said, if someone might have a similar amount of pain but they're much more functional, then it's still a big win. And being able to draw their attention to that is important.
Yeah, definitely, man, definitely.
And how do you find that goes? Obviously, it depends on the client, but you know, it does tend to take a little bit of convincing to get someone focused on the function. But yeah, how do you got any tips or tricks for people out there?
Well, I guess like it just sort of depends on the individual because, like, you've obviously got the ones who are really, asking every question, like, "Well, why are you doing this? Why are you doing dry needling? What does dry needling do? Why are you cupping?" So, I
Yeah.
guess it depends on the individual. So, those that are probably more inquisitive, are maybe harder to convince that what we're doing is going to have changes in their function or whatever, because they're already probably coming in with a bit of a closed mind, or have an opinion of physiotherapy as a
Mm, mm.
profession. And I think this is where, like, sometimes the profession, can be counterproductive to some therapists, because some people already come in with a closed mind and they think, oh, well, how are you going to be different to the other six physios
Yeah.
I've tried?
Yeah.
I think it's just important to obviously create that rapport, understand the client, listen, because if you don't listen to the client and don't actually build that relationship, then you can't sell anything.
Yeah.
You could have the best product, but if they don't believe or don't get along with you because you're not listening to them or whatever it might be. And I've had clients who've come in like a tornado. They've literally plonked 12 scans on my table and said, you won't be able to fix me. I've seen
Yeah.
every physio in Adelaide. Why are you different? And I've just gone, okay, look, let's let's just take a step back, and tell me a bit about your injury, or and let's get to know what your pain experience has been, and I'll do a detailed injury history and run through everything that they've been through, and they start to realize, oh, look, I've been compensating for this right ankle sprain since I was 18 years old, and that's probably why I'm loading up my left side on my body more. So I think for me, it's just about educating, but also understanding the client. So understanding the client first, then actually saying, look, we're going to try these techniques. These are going to do X, Y, and Z. And when they actually get off the table and go through those movements, so that's where obviously subjective and objective assessments are really important, because you can actually go, hey, when we first came in, you could only do this. When you now have, obviously had some work done, or been through some movement stuff, or done some wedge work, or whatever it might be, you are now able to load this better. But then hopefully that carries over to, whatever they're doing, whether it's CrossFit or just general gym work, or, getting out in the garden or anything like that. So I think that's my biggest thing, is just basically understanding the client, and, basically getting them to realize that, it's and pain is a complex thing too. This is probably one
Yeah.
thing that they got to realize. Pain isn't just like, hey, my shoulder's sore. It's like, how much sleep did you get last night? What's your nutrition like? Are you stressed at work? Are you drinking? How's your hydration? So I'm always about educating my clients and getting them to realize that, you've walked into the clinic as a physiotherapy client to solve your pain, but you're just more than a client to me. You are actually, I want to teach you the things that I know and the things that I geek out on, that not many people probably would do. But I get to sleep at night because I know that I'm, giving them as much information as I can, and then helping them make a change.
Yeah, man, that's so huge, because you're right. A lot of people do have this view of physiotherapy that it's almost like a massage service, or that they go in and they just want someone to treat the area that's painful. Um, but then when you actually get into it, yeah, it's all down to the pillars of health and all of these things that influence, yeah, not just our overall health, but our pain, and our experience of pain. And yeah, the fact that it doesn't always just come down to one specific issue in the body that needs to be fixed. It's like it's the whole picture. And yeah, that sometimes, especially in chronic pain, all of those other things matter a lot more. Sleep, stress, nutrition, they actually matter a lot more than what's going on from a movement point of view. Obviously, movement is always important, but if you only focus on movement, then you're going to be missing things in general. And obviously,
Exactly.
we need to stay in scope of practice, but something that we're all quite passionate about at TFC is like, yes, we have our own expertise. Like, I'm a physio, and we've got podiatrists in our community, and EPs and movement coaches and so on, and nutritionists and naturopaths. But we all actually need to have that broader view of what's important. Otherwise, we can just get so focused on, okay, I'm the movement person. I'm Rod from Movement Theory, so I just focus on movement. And that's my scope of practice. And then you miss out on all these important things, and that client misses out as well.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think having that, obviously what you guys are doing is really cool. Having that multidisciplinary approach and having a team that, you can refer out to, because everyone's obviously got their own wheelhouse that they sort of specialize
Mm.
in, and I think that's very important as well. And I think even with me, like I'll refer it if I need to. If I think this person needs some mental health care, I'll refer out to a psychologist or a GP that I respect, because yeah, we need to sort of it's all about the client. I think at the end of the day, it's what's best for the client, and I guess that's my philosophy. And that helps me sleep at night, knowing that I'm doing my best to help that client out as best as I
Yeah.
can.
And you're right. It's about caring. It's about caring about the client, not just as a business opportunity. It's interesting with healthcare, because health is a business these days, or sickness or disease is a business, and we people get into healthcare to help people, but then there's obviously business concepts that come into it and can muddy the waters a little bit. But as long as you sort of actually
Mm.
care about someone as a person, rather than just as like a number, or like a someone who's paying you, that can actually make all the difference. And you actually take the time to listen to them, like you said, and really understand their situation. It makes all the difference to your relationship, which your like therapeutic alliance is the term they use in the research, and that has such a big outcome or such a big influence on the outcome the person actually receives, and there's research around how that is a bigger predictor than like what the actual intervention you do is.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the business approach because I've sort of had this conversation with multiple people over the years, and when I first started movement theory, my main objective wasn't actually money, as funny as it might sound, because I was still working full time when I was
Mm,
building the brand,
mm,
so I didn't need money. I was doing this as an extra to see if I could actually develop something
right.
pretty cool. So I was never money driven, and I think that's very important because my my KPIs were, can I get this client better as quickly as possible?
Mm,
Um, and, I know some other health facilities rely on KPIs, and, as soon as a client walks through the door, it's like, all right, well, let's get you in for 12 sessions to
yeah.
fix this lower back. Whereas I'm like, all right, how quickly can I get you out of here? And how quickly will it take me to teach you the tools to then keep you from coming back? And I think, honestly, that's probably one of my biggest successes is, clients understand that they're here because I actually want them to get better as quickly as possible. And that's how, business comes to me. It's word of mouth.
Yeah.
I don't deal with private health, providers. I'm not a Bupa preferred provider. I'm just here to get people better, and my network on my marketing team, I suppose. But I think that's how I wanted to build movement theory from the ground up. And, I didn't want to get too big too quick because, I want to enjoy what I do and have a purpose as well.
And having that the actual genuine desire is to help people get better quickly, and to empower them to take better care of themselves so they don't actually need you. And in theory, it's like not the best business model because you're trying to put
No,
yourself out of business. But at
it's
the same
counterproductive,
time,
right?
there are
Yeah.
so many people with issues that if you do genuinely want to do that, then there'll be enough people to go, hey, you should go and see this guy who actually genuinely doesn't want to just book you in for 12 sessions and just see what happens. He actually cares
Mm.
about you getting better quickly, or
Yeah.
you getting better, you know, holistically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which is huge. And
Yeah.
what have you found? I guess with you, I'm interested by your own experience with movement and training, and what your background is. Like, obviously, you said you played a lot of sports growing up, but do you, yeah, what's like your most, your biggest sort of movement practice or influences around your own movement practice?
Yeah, so I've obviously played soccer my whole life. I did have a season playing AFL football, which is quite
Oh yeah.
interesting. Being a soccer player, definitely ended up with a few injuries there. But yeah, I mean, going through my soccer career, I had recurrent ankle sprains.
Mm,
Um,
me too.
Playing footy that one season, I had my first hamstring strain, which was pretty interesting, but also cool because I was like, okay, now I've done a hammy. Now I know how to rehabilitate, or hopefully I knew how to rehabilitate.
Yeah.
Um, and so playing soccer, a bit of AFL for that one season, but also training. My training's been a bit sporadic over the years, but probably over the last probably 2 or 3 years, I have honed down a little bit more, and I'm sort of in that sort of group training environment. So probably starting at CrossFit. That's probably where I
Mm,
first started. And look, that's a great community to be a part of. A lot of passionate individuals about health and well-being. And I really had I've made some great friends through the CrossFit community. As much as sometimes it does get bagged, it's like a bit of a cult.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I find that it's a group of like-minded people that love moving, and obviously they love moving under a bit of load. And under time, which sometimes lends itself to injury. And I've dealt with injury. I think one of my probably most significant injuries, and this is probably one thing that did change my tune a little bit, on CrossFit, but also B, on just my personal experience with pain and injury, is I had this neck issue that kind of wouldn't go away. And I was getting some referred symptoms down into my thumb and finger. And
Right.
this is before I started movement theory. And I went to see a GP. I should have went to see a physio, but I was like a bit worried about, maybe I had, some nerve damage or whatever. And he sent me off to a neurosurgeon.
Right.
Had some scans done. Yep, yep. And he basically said, "Look, mate, you've got a pinched nerve in your C6, I think it was. If this cortisone doesn't do anything to clear it up, we might have to get your disc out and replace the disc." And,
Seriously?
and
Jeez.
I was like, whoa. Okay, so I've come in with a little bit of pins and needles in my index and thumb, and I'm walking out maybe getting my disc replaced in my neck.
Jeez.
so I've obviously told my family. Mum's told everyone back home I'm having spinal surgery, this and that. And I was like, mapping out my dermatomes, I'm like, it doesn't relate to C6. Like this doesn't relate to that. So I kind of caught the neurosurgeon off guard there a bit, and I actually just went and did my own research and, kind of self-diagnosed myself with the help of a few other people around me with some kind of thoracic outlet symptoms.
Mm.
That actually cleared up over 2 weeks. Just doing some soft tissue work, some mobs through my thoracic spine, and yeah, here we are today. I've never had that sort of pins and needles through those two fingers.
Surgery free.
Yeah, surgery free. And I'm a massive advocate for non-operative approaches. I
Mm.
think a lot of people are misdiagnosed, like I was. And potentially, if I hadn't have questioned the why, I might have ended up with a replaced disc in my neck. You know what I mean?
It does
So
make you wonder how many people have had that exact situation where they just they haven't studied the body like you have. They really don't know what's going on. And yeah, a surgeon tells them, yeah, if this cortisone doesn't work, then we're going to have to operate. And it's like, well, gee, I hope the cortisone works. But yeah, if it doesn't, then I guess operating's the only option. And it's a bit scary, really, that's the state of it.
it is, man, and I think I'm just lucky that I've been through that, because I can honestly say that I rarely refer people off for a scan, only if it's required. If they've ruptured an Achilles or an
Mm,
ACL, then
mm,
there's no real way about that. But there's a lot of stuff we can do conservatively, and going on from that injury. I have had other injuries that have popped up, so lower back strain. I remember doing this probably 10 years ago, being a bit of a hero in the gym, chucked 60 kilos on my back squat. Haven't really back squatted before and felt a little
right.
pop in my lower back, and that sort of hit me like a ton of bricks. And, spent the weekend bedridden, probably consumed a few beers.
Yeah,
So
right.
so definitely didn't manage that lower back the way that I obviously would now. But having been through injuries over the years, and probably CrossFit was probably the last severe injury that I had. I do get the odd lower back sort of lets me know flare up doing some hit stuff, but my training now is a lot more focused and controlled, I suppose. I'm more around the yoga sort of path.
Mm,
I do believe in those sort of movements, Pilates. Um, I'm actually started training at a new gym, and their focus is a lot on strength stuff. But it's not sort of time under tension. It's more, you know, perfect movement, good control, mind muscle connection. And yeah, for me, it's just about moving the body in the best way that I can find at the moment. And I
mm.
think being around a community is really important. I find it enjoyable. And yeah, if I do a bit of hit training as well while I'm there, to get the heart rate up a little bit, that's kind of where I'm at the moment. But I think it just depends on the stage of your life you're at, because
For
I've
sure.
played soccer for 20 years, and running a business and playing soccer probably doesn't really fit anymore, unfortunately, until maybe one day I've got a few staff and maybe I can take a little bit of a step back. But for
Yeah.
me, it's just about you know being around good movement, good strength, and I love the stuff that you guys do with your beams and stuff. I'll probably have to get on top of that and maybe grab a kit from you guys soon and start doing some stuff. But you
Yeah, mate,
know,
you'd have fun.
yeah, for me, it's all about doing stuff within your own limitations, but just moving the body the best as you can. Because I think As a society, we're adapting to our environment. We spend times, driving to work. We'll get to the office, sit in a chair for 8 hours.
Yeah,
We'll then drive home, probably sit on the couch watching TV, probably eating dinner at the same time. We've spent the whole day sitting. So
that's it, man.
um, we
Yeah.
are adapting to our environment. So, I'm a big advocate for even just doing, 20, 30 minutes of movement or yoga type stuff, every day to sort of keep your body feeling fresh.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good point, and there's a few things I'd touch on there, and obviously, the more I've explored movements and the more I've been coached and yeah, learnt different systems, the more you could learn about movement all you wanted, like from an academic point of view, and we obviously did through physio school. But really, you only know something when you actually experience it. I think, especially when it comes to movement, it's such an experiential thing. And then once you actually go through an injury and do things, treat your own injuries with movement, and have that experience, then it can actually make you into a much more confident clinician of going, okay, well, I know that movement is really key here. And I know, I guess, how to progress and regress different movements because I've done, a lot of these things myself. And so it's kind of our job as physios or as healthcare professionals to be exploring different things, like explore yoga, try Pilates, try strength training, try CrossFit, try obviously everyone's busy and don't have you don't have endless time to try all these things, but
Yeah.
it's important to at least get exposed to these different methods and not just pigeonhole yourself into, oh, Pilates is the only way, and I only do Pilates, and my clients only do Pilates, and so on. It's sort of, you need to have that broader perspective on movement and training, I think.
And I think it's almost like you're taking one for the team for your clients.
Yeah,
Like I think I've tried a lot of different movement modalities. I've put myself in a CrossFit gym. I've put myself doing snatches and jerks and all that sort of stuff. And for me, it's not. I don't find it enjoyable, but I know a lot of my clients do. So it's also understanding the movements that I put myself under and going, oh, that's why so and so has some pain in their left hip when they do that movement. And I think as health professionals and movement specialists, I suppose we should put ourselves out there to move and do these things, because then we can actually sympathize with our clients as well and go, oh, okay, we understand why this person is getting pain when
mm,
running or whatever it might be.
yeah, yeah. And then also, like you talked about, everyone is sort of sitting all the time, and you could do an hour, even an hour of exercise a day, even if it was like half an hour of yoga and half an hour of strength training, and even if you chucked in half an hour of Pilates or something in there. But if you were sitting the rest of the day, you'd still probably end up with issues, and you wouldn't be getting anywhere near as much out of the training that you're doing. So it is a big part of it is about building more movement into your day and finding ways to either stand or sit on the ground instead of sitting in a chair, and little movement snacks, and just break up all the sitting as much as possible. I mean, it's our society is very set up for it. It's just like everywhere you look, it's just promotes sitting pretty much.
Yeah,
But having that awareness and going, no, this is really not what my body is supposed to be doing, and
yeah.
yeah, it's huge.
100%. I'm not sure if you've read the book by Viber Cregan Reed called Primate Change. But he talks about
No,
the way that we've evolved and how definitely write that one down.
yeah,
Yeah,
primate
so
primate change,
primate
as in
change,
like primate.
as in primate. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, as in climate, but play on words,
yeah, I
primate.
like it.
And he talks about that, how we've just over the generations, from the industrial revolution, just evolved into sitting. Like
Yeah,
we even just from kids, we were out running around, riding our bikes and all that sort of stuff. And as soon as you turn 18 and get a job, that kind of stops, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
you're catching the train to work, you're driving to work, and as a society, that's kind of where we're heading. And it is sad to see, but it's kind of like, what can we do about it? Even if we do have an hour of play a day, it's probably still not going to do much to resolve the 16 hours we spend sitting. So
yeah.
um, yeah, it's
It's
pretty.
It's such a
confronting.
huge societal issue that, hey, and it's really just down to the individual. Like you couldn't say, oh, everyone has to be moving all day every day, because it's just not feasible for most people. But it's just, you just got to tell people, look, you can't sit all day. If you want to be healthy long term, you just cannot sit all day, and it's up to the. I think, it's up to us to give people guidance and give people tips and tricks, but it really is up to the individual to take responsibility for that and go, okay, I need to prioritize this. Otherwise, yeah, it's too easy to just fall into the habit of just sitting.
Yeah, and look, things like standing desks and taking the stairs up to the office instead of the elevator, or parking 3 or 4 blocks away are small things that I tell my clients they could do. But I mean, at the end of the day, you can only do so much, hey, and
Yeah,
encourage as much as you can.
and those kinds of tips always kind of sound like a bit of a cop out. Like, oh, how much difference is it if I would just take the stairs? If I take the stairs versus taking an elevator, and it's I think it's important to draw people's attention away from like that one specific moment. Yeah, like you might burn 2 calories or something from walking up the stairs versus none going up the elevator. But if you are habitually always looking for a way to move rather than to be static, then that changes a lot over time. Those habits actually do add up to a lot over time.
Yeah,
It's
habit stacking.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
But yeah, one of my favorite tips that I always talk about is just sitting on the ground. Like I'm sitting on the ground currently, which I always do for podcasts, but the chair is actually the main issue, I think, because you're not going to find someone who sits on the ground for 8 hours at once, and it's certainly you're not going to sit on the ground for 8 hours in one position. So actually, being on the ground is a stimulus to move your body frequently, even if it's just changing position, and you don't get the luxury. Oh, I don't know. You just don't get that ability to have your hips at 90 degrees. Your hips are either in rotation or in full flexion in a deep squat, or they're in some kind of different position. But the chair is kind of like halfway between standing and ground resting, and it's not a good halfway to be.
yeah. No, 100%. I mean, I think and it probably comes down to workplaces and how educated the OH&S guys are, or whoever manages the OH&S stuff is. Maybe just even creating a different environment in the workplace. But how is that going to change? Are they going to put bean bags everywhere, or like what's it going to
Yeah.
be like? I know some places have like mobile stations where they don't have the same office space every time, but how is that going to change, and how will that actually look?
It's
Is
such
it
a
is really
it's a tough thing, hey, because I feel like everyone's still kind of caught up on the ergonomics side of thing, of like, get your perfect desk set up and have your seat at the right height and have your monitor at the right height and get in perfect posture. But you could be in that perfect ideal ergonomic position, and if you just stayed like that all day, it would still be terrible for your body, because
yeah.
you're not getting any variability. But everyone's
I
like,
know, right?
oh, set this up perfectly. It's like we literally just need more movement. It's not about
Yeah,
being in the perfect posture all the time. It's just how many different postures can you be in comfortably, and yeah, how much variability can you get? It needs to be a big shift, because I know that I've actually been talking to my a physio mate up here about going into the corporate world a bit more. But my understanding of it is that corporations want to tick a box in terms of OH&S and ergonomics, and they want to, yeah, they care about their employees' safety and well-being and everything, but it's mostly about, okay, have we ticked the ergonomics box? Okay, yes, but it's like it needs to go so much deeper, but it'll take a lot of education.
yeah, yeah. That's it.
Yeah, and a bit more. How often do you work with feet? Because obviously, a big reason why we connected was through your interest in feet, and obviously Gary Ward stuff is has a large focus on the feet. Um, I'm interested. I always love hearing about, like, a big part of my experience as a physio was working mostly manual therapy based, but with a whole body assessment, where we would find things like someone's shoulder pain was being the main issue was their calf, and so that it ties in pretty well with the fascial lines and everything. But what have you found with like the foot connection with other body parts? Have you found like obviously knees and lower backs and things like that can be affected by the foot. But what maybe some sort of not case studies, but some examples of what you found with feet and working with, the fascial lines through the feet and everything.
Yeah, definitely. So I pretty much look at everyone's feet on first
Yep.
assessment. So
Nice.
some of my clients probably think I've got a bit of a foot fetish, but it's just where I start. It's where my eyes always go. What's your toe splay like? How your arch is holding up,
Yeah.
and sort of seeing how the foot presents. In a static sense as well, but also seeing how much movement do they have in the feet. So how are those bones articulating? So I might do some assessment using some wedges to seeing how much pronation and supination that person actually has, and seeing if they actually can get into those positions and load up the tissues. Obviously, depending on the gaits, the part of the gait cycle that we're trying to work on as well. But I'll do a lot of fascia work through the feet. My clients love it. And it's almost like instant relief for a lot of people that come in with calf, knee, hip issues,
Yeah.
because where if you're familiar with the joint by joint approach of the body, ankles need to be flexible and mobile, hips need to be stable. Knees need to be stable, hips need to be mobile. If we can improve that mobility at the ankle, then it means that the knee can actually do its thing and actually be a
Yeah.
stable joint. So giving people that freedom through their feet has sorted out lots of things. Probably the crazy one that I've come across was an older client came in with some neck pain, and looking at his feet was really stiff. Always had tight calves, he said, but more on one side. So I think his right calf was tighter than the other. So just doing some fascia work through his right foot, getting him to pronate and supinate a bit better, and also doing a bit of work through his calf actually cleared up his neck pain, which I
Yeah.
thought was pretty
Epic.
cool.
Yeah.
And that was obviously one of the great buy-ins of the fascia work and understanding how these fascial lines work. But that does stick out in one of my minds. That was one of the big like, oh shit, this stuff actually works. I'm not just sort of selling something that is sort of voodoo stuff. But it's more than that. I've had so much great outcomes from just working the feet. People feel lighter, easier with movement, and these are the sort of things that people come and tell me, which I think's the feet are so well misunderstood sometimes.
Mm.
As some of the podiatry world are big on orthotics. People are asked to probably not on that same wavelength. I think they do have a place. If you're
Yeah.
rehabilitating someone, maybe short term, we can provide like a soft orthotic or something like that. But for me, it's about getting people on the right footwear. Obviously, I'm a big advocate for Vivo Barefoot.
Mm.
Slight plug there for the show. But I've wore Vivo Barefoot shoes for almost 4 years. I've got my younger brother into Vivo Barefoots, even though he probably doesn't wear them as often as he should. I've got a good mate of mine, Steve, into them, and he wears them to work every day, and he loves them. He's had some hip issues for a lot of his life, but same thing, being at a desk, 24/7, hips and ankles lock up pretty well. So,
Mm.
I'm a massive advocate for footwear because it's the environment we place our feet in.
Yeah.
If we were able to walk around barefoot, I think you would see a lot less issues with the whole body. I think not just knees and hips.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that I think it's really valuable to be able to show someone that like in that instance with that client that you just said, where releasing the foot and the ankle really helped his neck pain. And then it's probably an easier sell from there to go, look, you really need to look after your feet and strengthen and mobilize your feet. And so your footwear is really not helping you here. Or the best thing you can do for that is change your footwear, as opposed to, otherwise it could be a bit abstract, like, oh yeah, you've got neck pain, change your footwear. It's like, no, I've got neck pain. It's like,
Yeah.
so I think that's a really helpful thing. And then for anyone listening, just to take that lesson, that regardless of what issue you're experiencing, changing your footwear might not be the answer to whatever issue you're experiencing, but it is important for the whole body what your foot does. And your footwear is the main environment of your feet, and the main environment of your feet is going to have the biggest influence on their health, basically. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, totally agree.
And so do you have you got it set up where you're like fitting people with Vivos and stuff as well, or are you just recommending them to?
Yeah, so I've got a size run here. So
Yeah.
I've got a few different styles that clients can sort of try on. And yeah, that way they can sort of see what their sizing is like. And then they can order straight through me. I'll give them, my clients a generous discount. And, obviously everyone's happy with the footwear. But it's pretty easy. So once they try them on, and it's like, oh, wow, like
Yeah.
why haven't I put myself in these shoes, before? And it's like, it's just, yeah. I mean, I wear them every day as well. So, it's probably an easy sell for them. So, oh shit, Rod wears them every day. But,
I think that's the big
they,
thing. If you're recommending something, it's important that you actually use it and believe in it. And yeah, and I think it's a good conversation starter as well, because if someone sees your shoes, they're like, oh, those shoes look different. What's the go with those? And then you can get into it. I think some people can be a bit resistant to that at first, of like, no, my shoes are fine. I paid $200. I paid, good money for these shoes, and they've got the arch support, and everyone's kind of sold on this support and comfort and, control thing with shoes. But usually it doesn't take much explanation for them to go, oh, actually, yeah, true. That doesn't make as much sense as just, letting the foot be a foot. But people do have to be ready for that, I think, or they have to be a little bit interested, maybe. Otherwise, they
yeah,
can
one
shut
of the
down.
things, Yeah, one of the things that I say is like, well, look, we weren't born with a pair of kicks on. Like we don't come out the womb with a pair
So
of
simple.
Jordans on. So it's like, where has this sort of desire to wear shoes come from? And it's obviously, industrial revolution, and fashion obviously is massive, and I was a massive sneakerhead. Like I, had
Yeah,
Yeezys and
right.
Ultra Boosts and you name it, and probably spent way too much on shoes. And I've still got the odd pair here and there, but I don't use them, mate, because every time I wear them, my knees hurt, my hips hurt. It's just, until you feel good in wearing shoes, you just don't want to wear anything else.
Yeah, you get very sensitive to poor shoe, like to, yeah, tight and restrictive and narrow and heeled shoes. Like I remember it was a while back, I guess a few years ago now. But I'd been around the barefoot shoe stuff for ages, probably since uni. So it's been about 6-7 years. But then really made it like the full switch to only wearing barefoot shoes, yeah, maybe 4 years ago. And then a year later or something, I was going on a date, and I was like, oh, I've got these, I wanted to look a little fancier, and I put on these heeled, tight, restrictive dress shoes. And literally within like 20 minutes, I was like, I've got this weird feeling in my neck, like a weird, almost headachy, tight feeling in the back of my neck. And I was like, I never feel this. And it's literally 20 minutes after putting on these shoes. I was like, yeah, okay, that's a good. You just become ultra sensitive to it, which is, I don't know if it's kind of good, because then you just don't wear those shoes, but it's kind of bad. Not bad, but it's like, oh well, if you want to do it, if you have to or want to wear the shoes, then it's a problem. But now I just have Vivo barefoot leather dress shoes, so I don't have to
Yeah.
I don't have to make the
I,
sacrifice.
I was about to say, their range is so, so diverse now. Like
Yeah,
every shoe that comes out, you're like, oh, that's a sick,
yeah,
even like the hiking boots they've got, you'd rock them with jeans and no problem, and people would
yeah,
be like,
yeah.
oh, these are sick.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to have the styles that they want available, because it's all well and good to say, oh, you have to wear barefoot shoes, and if someone looks at them and goes, oh, I hate the look of that, then they're never going to wear them. Even if they buy them,
No.
even if you like convince them to buy them, they hate the look, then it's like, oh, it's not gonna really work. But if they like how they feel and they're okay at least with how they look, then you've got a winner. But it's good that there's so many brands out there now, sort of making lots of different styles, and there's really no excuse not to have barefoot shoes, really.
No, that's it.
Cool, mate. Well, we've come up on time. Time flies when you're having fun. But we'll wrap this one up here, and then I reckon we should dive even deeper into some things. Maybe next time I'm down in Adelaide, we can catch up and have an in-person podcast and get the mics out, and I'm sure we could talk for at least another hour or so about lots of different stuff to do with physio. But I appreciate the time and you coming on. And I am looking forward to connecting in person finally.
Sounds good, man. No, thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here and chew the fat. It's good to have like-minded people in the industry as well.
It's so important, and that's a big part of why we wanted to do this podcast, is to, I guess, put the spotlight on people that are taking this more holistic and active, empowering approach, and also to connect people with those ideas and to make it more obvious that there are a lot of people on this wavelength now. There's still a lot of work to do, but there are a lot of people who share this very similar philosophy when it comes to treatment and movement and the body. And we're going to be stronger in numbers, basically. Safety in numbers would be the power of that community of people who are going, yes, there's other people, oh, he's saying what I'm thinking, and so on. So it's great. Cool. Well, I think we'll be, I don't know when we'll release this podcast, but we'll be hoping to be down in Adelaide again, probably early next year. So we'll have to keep in touch up until then, and then we'll get another potty going.
Sounds good, man. Good chatting.
Cool. Thanks, mate. Thanks for listening, guys.
Take care, mate.